Those two men, the two head coaches, they were college roommates at Jacksonville State. Third quarter, UAB up 10-0, first and 10 at the UAB 25. Just go ahead and trickerage. It's a double reverse, and eventually it ends up in the hands of Hayden Pittman. 32 yards down the field, got it. Now in the third still, 2nd and 9, 23-yard line. Touchdown! Heather Johnson the third to Garrett Prince in the end zone. Third consecutive scoring drive. UAB was up 17-0. They outgained Jacksonville State by 363 yards. That connection, Johnson to Trey Shropshire. Part of it, Johnson, by the way, 17 of 21, 320 yards and a couple of touchdowns. UAB 31-0.
You know, for years, right around this time of year, you'd see Trevor Maddich in the green room or in the studio getting mic'd up or in the hallways, and he'd have like a sunglasses tan line, and he'd have all sorts of color and great stories about being chased by a buffalo in a national park, like at a Grand Teton, because that's the kind of life he leads when he's on his campus tours, his off-season campus tours, where he goes and he drives around road trip style with Team Maddich to various programs across this great country. Well, this year it's all virtual because of the pandemic, but he did check in with folks out west, where a Pac-12 title is very much in the conversation for the Oregon Ducks. Now, the very latest installment as a check-in from Trevor on his travels.
The most devastatingly disruptive defensive player in college football plays for Oregon. Defensive end Kayvon Thibodeaux is so dominating on such a spectacular level that he has a chance to be only the second defensive player in history to win the Heisman Trophy. And that's exactly what he intends to do. Just ask him. He'll tell you right to your face, and then he'll go out and prove that he's worthy. Let's go to the film room and watch how Kayvon tosses opponents across the football field. Now, in order for a defensive player to be considered for the Heisman, he can't just be great at his job. He has to be dominating in entertaining fashion. And part of the fun of watching Thibodeaux on tape is how he tosses opponents all around the field. Now, because he's so athletic and fast, you would think that the advantage for the offense would be to run right at him to negate that athleticism. Well, let's see how it works out for him. That's getting tossed across the formation. And then the athleticism comes in, finishes the play. So, plan B, get an advantage for the offense. Trap him from across the formation. That'll smash him, right? Yeah. Not so much. So how do you get an advantage against Kayvon Thibodeaux? Well, how about you force him to cover a running back deep down the field in space on a wheel route? Because Thibodeaux is a defensive end after all. But he's a defensive end with the speed and agility of a safety. Now, Oregon won't ask him to cover like this down the field very often this year. But when he does, he stands out. And speaking of standing out, Pac-12 championship game, USC. Elijah Vera Tucker was the first-round draft choice of the Jets this year. And Thibodeaux goes around him as if he's not even there. He was MVP of this championship game. Now, sacking the quarterback is very important, but that doesn't get you Heisman consideration. Crushing your opponent's dreams is what gets you noticed.
There's Kayvon Thibodeaux. Wow.
One-on-one matchup, he's very difficult to block. And he's only getting better.
Now we're joined by Oregon defensive end, Kayvon Thibodeaux. And Kayvon, let's talk about fear. What role does fear play in football?
I feel like it all starts with the first play. You know, if you're able to strike fear into your opponent, that'll carry out through the game, and especially until the fourth quarter when they get tired and, you know, when their back's against the wall. Sometimes you can talk to them. Sometimes even like a quarterback, being able to whisper to them, or, you know, not always getting the sack, but getting the pressure and having them feel your presence and, you know, letting them know if they don't get that ball out quick, you'll be on them.
Now, you're known as not just a guy who strikes physical fear, but a guy who uses your mind. And you play chess. What role does the thinking side of chess play in your football game?
Well, chess helps you set up moves. When you learn that, you know, your first move and your second move helps up your third move, that's what all people, like a lot of people who play chess say, like, you know, 3-move checkmate because of the moves they set up. So when you know, to correlate that to football, if I have, you know, first down, second down to kind of set up what moves I'm going to do in pass rush, third down, you know, I kind of have the move that I know you're expecting versus the move that I'm going to do.
You've got big goals. So let's start with football. What are your goals in football this year?
First is to win this fall camp and have the best fall camp of the year. Then it's to hopefully play for a national championship, go 1-0 through the process. And then with the national championship, I hope to win the Heisman.
Oh, okay, now, win the Heisman. There's only one primarily defensive player in history that has ever won the Heisman. That's Michigan's Charles Woodson. How can you be the second? What needs to happen in order for you to get to that pinnacle?
Well, I need to be at the prime shape of my life. I need to be able to be a 4-down player, in which I am, and I need to be able to execute and play at the highest level for the whole game. We need to win, as a team and play Oregon football.
Thibodeaux's impact and charisma make him the ultimate game changer. And I expect his coaches to give him some extra opportunities to shine, like block a few punts, which he's already done, and possibly even score some touchdowns. That's what Michigan's Charles Woodson did when he became the only primarily defensive player in history to have won the Heisman. He bolstered his resume by returning kicks and playing some wide receiver. But as for Kayvon, he's focused on the football and letting the rest play out on its own. For the rest of us, every Oregon game should be appointment viewing.
Now, if only we had some sort of draft expert to talk more about one of the best players in the country. Good morning to Mel Kiper Jr. with us on SportsCenter AM. And Mel, your latest 2022 draft big board has Thibodeaux at the very top. Myles Garrett was the last non-quarterback to be taken first overall. That was back in 2017. What's the potential here for Thibodeaux to follow in his footsteps and actually go #1 overall?
Brandon, I think it's highly probable. I think we look at Kayvon Thibodeaux and the dominance and the completeness to his game. He's not a one-dimensional pass rusher. He's a complete football player. You think about 12 sacks, 24 tackles for loss over the last 2 years. You think about not only a guy like Myles Garrett, but Davion Clowney, Mario Williams, Courtney Brown. It has happened on 4 occasions that a defensive end has gone #1. Pass rushers are what everybody wants and needs. And Thibodeaux, #1 player out of high school, #1 player on the board right now. That maintaining that level of consistency, Randy, is why definitely he could be in line to be the #1 pick overall in the 2022 draft.
All right, you don't have to go very far down your draft board to find the top offensive player on the big board. That's Sooners quarterback Spencer Rattler, and he started just 1-2 last season before winning the final 8 games, really coming into his own. What aspect of his game took the biggest leap over the course of last season?
Randy, don't be mistake prone, and decision making kept improving. Think about the first 5 games with 4 interceptions. Think about 5 interceptions first 4 games, 2 interceptions last 7 games. So those INTs, those mistakes, were ending quickly over the second half of the season, really the last 3 quarters of the season. He can spin it, 67.5 completion percentage. We talked about the fact that he eliminated the mistakes. 6 rushing touchdowns, featured with his arm, featured with his legs. So if he continues to maintain a level of consistency week in and week out through this campaign, Randy, obviously he's in line to be the first quarterback taken. Maybe compete with Thibodeaux to be the first player taken overall. And certainly a quarterback compete with Sam Howell, quarterback North Carolina. That's the 2 really battling, Randy, to see who will be the first quarterback taken.
It's something to keep an eye on all season long, and the season begins for Rattler and company. They open up Saturday against Tulane. That's noon Eastern on ABC. Mel, thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
That is absolutely filthy. Oh!